So while Raul is rounding up the last few people, here's an example of how you might apply life's principles in an organizational context. And I don't have a lot of time, so this will just be one example. But one of the life's principles is be resource in terms of material and energy efficient. And so at an organizational level, this might be anything from actually using low energy processes like these power strips, where whatever you plug into the orange outlets there might be critical things that have to stay on, but everything else, when you turn off that power switch, it shuts off everything that's connected to it. So a lot of our electronics these days produce vampire energy. They're using energy even when we're not using the device, right? And so a power strip in your business or organization, making sure that all of your computers and chargers and whatnot are connected to power strips so that you can turn off non-essential appliances when you leave the building, is one source of literally being resource and energy efficient, right? But there's also a lot of metaphorical ways to apply life's principles to your organization. So another way to be resource efficient could be to provide employee training at your company, right? So instead of every time a new employee comes on board trying to figure out, well, who's supposed to give them a key and who's supposed to give them the computer passwords and who's responsible for this amount of paperwork, and how do you figure all those things out, as well as how do they serve customers, how do they serve clients. If you can develop guidelines like this ambulance service paramedic training kit or a tutor training kit, for English as a second language learners, if you can hand that manual to any new employee, it's a way of being energy efficient instead of trying to figure out with every new employee who's supposed to doing what do they need to do, that sort of thing. And it seems like a very simple example, right? But yet there are a lot of smaller companies that don't necessarily invest the energy up front so that they can be resource and energy efficient later on. So that's just one quick example, and I certainly would be happy to talk to anyone individually about more examples of how life's principles can be applied at the organizational level. So now I want to talk a little bit about education. I'm our director of university education at the Biomimicry Institute, which is an NGO, a non-governmental organization based in the US. And we primarily work with educators at all levels, trying to help them teach tomorrow's sustainable innovators, the youth that are going to be putting biomimicry into practice in the future. So just very quickly, I just gave you a bunch of case studies, so this is just going to be very quick review for the sake of time. But we can mimic natural functional forms. So there's a company called Sharklet that's actually mimicked the skin of sharks in order to prevent organisms from adhering to them. So a lot of slow-moving marine organisms tend to have barnacles and algae and other things that attach to them, including bacteria. And we have a problem with bacteria adhering to a lot of our surfaces, right? Both in hospitals and on things such as large ships, where when barnacles and other marine organisms adhere to those ships that we use to transport a lot of our cargo, it severely reduces the energy efficiency. There are so many organisms that attach that there's a lot of drag put on those. So a company called Sharklet Technologies has developed a surface that's the lower of the two smaller pictures there, that emulates what are called the denticles on shark skin. And because of that design, sharks, even though this is a basking shark which doesn't swim very fast, you can see that it's a very clean marine organism. It doesn't have a lot of things that are attached to it. And because of that design, it's very hard for bacteria and other things to attach. So by emulating that strategy, we can apply that to airplanes, to ships, to hospital surfaces. That sort of textured pattern can help prevent bacterial contamination. So mimicking natural functional forms. Another quick example of mimicking how nature makes things, or mimicking process, is there's a company called Pure Bond Technology out of the United States that has emulated the adhesive in blue mussel byssus threads. So byssus threads are what help connect the mussel to wet, rocky, uneven surfaces, right? These organisms live in tidal areas, they're constantly getting pounded by waves, and yet they can stay attached. Our adhesives, if any of you have ever had a Band-Aid on and you've worn it in the shower or in a river, they don't tend to stick very well once they get wet, right? So our adhesives don't tend to work well in wet, dirty conditions. Conventional plywood is made using a lot of formaldehyde, a carcinogen. It's used as a binder because it has good mechanical properties. But the blue mussel byssus has better mechanical properties. And a scientist out of the, I think it was out of Oregon State University, was able to modify a protein that he got from soya beans, based on the chemistry of the blue mussel byssus thread, and create an adhesive that would meet the rigorous standards for plywood in terms of durability and being able to withstand dampness. And now 95% of Columbia Forest Products plywood utilizes that technology. So they've been able to reduce, again, the amount of toxic product, formaldehyde, that goes into their product. It's better for humans because formaldehyde, when it's put into human products like trailers or cabinetry, it off-gases, so that formaldehyde leaks out into the environment and makes us sick. And also, it's a good business decision for them because they don't have to get rid of as much toxic waste as they did when they were utilizing formaldehyde. And here's just another example of mimicking at the system level. So how can we mimic natural communities? And I'm going to show you an example of industrial symbiosis, which I mentioned. This might be a little bit hard to read, but that the big word in the middle there, brewery. So small breweries in the United States are very, very popular these days. My hometown has 65,000 people, and I think we have 8 microbreweries now, so 8 places that brew beer locally. But traditionally, you know, the inputs to a brewery, water, hops, yeast, cleaners, grains, energy, and packaging, the only product you get out of that brewery is beer. And then everything else, most breweries consider as waste. So the wastewater, hops, yeast, and cleaners go to the sewage treatment plant. Spent grain either gets landfilled, or if you're lucky, it goes to provide animal feed. Lots of waste heat gets released to the atmosphere, and the packaging goes to landfill. So here's another much more complex system model, right? So in this case, this is actually a model for a brewery in Stevensville, Montana, which is where Janine lives. And this brewery plans to produce beer, soda, and tea, so sort of a multifunctional design, as Raul was mentioning. And then all of the waste products are going to be recycled. So I won't dwell on the details, and I can show anyone this in more detail later. But they can go into mycoculture, or producing mushrooms. After that substrate is spent, it could be used as biopulp. Again, some of the waste material can go towards vermiculture, which is, you know, worm composting or worm growing, which can go back into animal husbandry. Some of the compost produced by the worm bins can be used for agricultural purposes. The waste carbon dioxide and wastewater can go into a greenhouse and be used in a biodigester. That sludge coming out of that can be used in the mushroom culturing, and also go towards aquaculture. And then there's more recycling and upcycling of some of the other products. So again, there's a lot going on in that graphic, but just compare it to, okay, here we have simple outputs going in, and essentially beer and waste products coming out. Whereas here, we have multiple products, as well as all of those, the spent grain, spent hops, surplus yeast, heat, CO2, and wastewater, all have another use, and some of them have multiple levels of future use. So a system is example. And so what do all these case studies have to do with education? So biomimicry is not only an innovation methodology, but it's also a really valuable approach to education, I think at any age. Especially for young kids, but really at any age. So at the Biomimicry Institute, we're a non-governmental organization that promotes learning from, emulating, and conserving nature to develop more sustainable and healthier technologies and designs for people. And that conserving nature part is really important to us. I didn't dwell on it too much in our first lecture, but if we lose the organisms and the ecosystems that provide inspiration for us, they're lost forever. Frank Fish, the whale power guy, tells the story of if in the fossil record, there's no record of those humpback whale tubercles. It doesn't exist in the fossil record. So if humpback whales didn't still exist in our oceans today, he never would have had the inspiration that he had to create these more energy efficient products in his company. So that conserving nature is our ultimate goal at the Biomimicry Institute. We want you to reconnect and be so inspired by nature that you'll also work to conserve it. I took out a lot of slides here for the sake of time, so I took out the more interesting pictures for each of these topics. So I'm just going to go quickly through this slide. Why biomimicry? And why do educators like it? And why students like it? So for educators, it's another reason that nature matters. It connects nature to any discipline, to engineering, design, architecture, art, biology, physics, sustainability. Inspiration from nature can be applied to any of those disciplines. And students like it because it relates nature to technology and school to the real world and practical applications. So the Gates Foundation, which Bill Gates Foundation in the United States has invested quite a bit in education, especially in his home state of Washington. And they did a study a few years ago of some high schools there and found that 80% of the students who dropped out of high school did so because they said they felt school just wasn't relevant to their lives. So biomimicry gives some relevance to what they're doing. It's not just learning about math, sort of out in the ether, or learning about math for math's sake, but rather applying, mathematical principles from nature to practical applications. Educators also like it because it frames nature as an admirable role model, and it can change student ambitions of what to be and do. I mean, when I was going to school, of course, nobody had ever heard of a biomimic, right? Now we talk about people being biomimics, I guess, or biomimeticists. So putting that out there for students as something that they can become. It doesn't have to, you don't have to be an engineer or you don't have to be an architect, but you can also be a biomimicist. And the slide I had up here was, a role model of Donald Trump. Do you guys know Donald Trump? Yeah, okay. So, crazy hairdo and everything. It's like, that's sort of what we see in our media, right, as something to aspire to. This wealthy, outspoken, fancily dressed gentleman, right, with a lot of power. That's sort of what we put out there as a lot of our role models, celebrities, wealthy folks. But what if a hummingbird instead could be a model for a student? Totally change their mindset, right? And about critters, no matter what age you are, if you're a kindergartner or in high school, university student, or even a professional looking for a new learning opportunity, we all like animals, right? If we pay attention, I think everybody likes animals. Maybe not all animals, but there's some animal that everybody likes. So it's exciting to study when animals are involved. For educators, biomimicry also promotes critical thinking about human environmental impact. And again, getting into life's principles, getting into waste products, getting into the way we manufacture things, but also showing that there's another way to do things where we won't have such a large environmental impact. And kids love to explore how technologies work. Take kids into a factory, or even I would argue a lot of adults, and it's really fascinating, right? We don't necessarily know how our world is made anymore or how it works. There's a lot of expertise that is hidden away in buildings. So being able to show kids how technologies work, both in the biological world and in human applications, is exciting. Biomimicry is also project-based and fosters creativity. And there's sort of been certainly in the US, there's been a loss of creativity in our academic programs, but that creative side is also really important to science. It's only recently that we've even separated science and art in our disciplines, right? A lot of great scientists also in the past were also great artists. And Leonardo da Vinci, you know, sort of the prime example. So bringing creativity back into the classroom, no matter what you're studying. And kids like it. It's about inventors and problem solving, and kids seem to have this natural affinity for inventors, right? We're fascinated by people who come up with new ideas and new ways of doing things. Biomimicry is also solution-oriented. So instead of always fighting against something, we can work towards positive solutions for change. And similarly, for students, it's optimistic. A lot of kids at our education summit just a couple weeks ago, one of the junior high school educators said that when she goes into classrooms these days, kids are just, by the time they hit junior high, they're thoroughly depressed by the state of the world. They hear a lot of bad news, and biomimicry provides a reason to be optimistic. So putting some positivity back into what we're teaching our kids. In the US, we talk about, there's a lot of talk and a lot in our academic standards about STEM topics, both at the high school level and at the university level. So that stands for, now I've forgotten, hold on a second, math, engineering, oh, I'm totally blanking out. Thank you, jeez, talking too fast. Science, technology, engineering, and math. So STEM is, you know, it's a huge acronym. We certainly have to teach in some ways to STEM standards. So biomimicry provides a nice framework for doing that without, you know, being too boring or just teaching to the test, as we say. Again, for students, helps explain why school subjects matter and also how they are interconnected. So instead of putting all of those things in a silo, here's your science class, here's your technology class, here's your math class, it can provide for a more integrated form of education. It's also very inclusive, adapting readily to various socioeconomic realities and personal student interests. No matter where you are, you can walk right outside the doors here, very urban, Mexico City, and you're gonna find nature to see. There's gonna be something flying, there's gonna be a weed growing up through the cracks, there's gonna be something for you there. And also, why students like it, it relates to their lives and is not abstract. So I have my final slide to go with that. So there are lots and lots of examples of biomimicry, so you can shape the content to relate to students of all ages and backgrounds and interests. Biomimicries, you can also relate biomimicry to jobs. So in this case, the parents are thinking about this is obviously an old cartoon, they're thinking about the future, and is their Nintendo video playing son, you know, gonna find some job in the Nintendo market when he's older. John Warner is a green chemist in the United States who also works with us and does nature-inspired chemistry. So he works with us specifically on nature-inspired chemistry projects on our for-profit arm. And he said that he used to be a professor in Massachusetts, and he formed the first green chemistry degree program in the United States in a university. And how long do you think any of his students took to get a job? What do you think the average time was for one of his students graduating from a green chemistry program to get a job? How many? Have you heard this story before? 3 days. So how many of you expect to get out of school and find a job that you really want within 3 days? But the trend is going there. So that's one example specifically within chemistry, and it's broader than nature-inspired chemistry, but green chemistry is very related, that life-friendly chemistry part of life's principles. But companies are looking to be innovative, they're looking to be more sustainable. They know that our resources are limited, so even if that's not what you see in the news, at lots of these big companies, that's what's going on behind the scenes. They know that quietly they have to change, they have to innovate, they have to practice more life-friendly business. These are some of the companies that have utilized biomimicry. If you can read those, I think so. And so back to education, when you think about it, what does nature use education for? Nature uses education to teach the young, even the very, very young, how to fit in and to flourish in their environment. So how to sustain themselves in the environment that they live in. So what's our vision at the Biomimicry Institute? A world where every student learns of biomimicry, not just the gifted and talented, not just the underserved or the wealthy, not just the furry and cute, but every student. So, and through this exposure is inspired to greater appreciation and respect for the natural world, higher aspirations for the health and sustainability of human technologies, and newfound capacity and dedication to effect technological improvements and the continuance of a biodiverse planet. So that is our big vision. And our strategy, if it's going to come up here. Our strategy is primarily to invest in educators. We invest in students to some extent, but we don't think we can reach students fast enough, right? By investing in educators, they can then go out and reach many more students than we can reach. So we work on the K through 12 level, we work at the university level, and we also work in what we call non-formal education. And I'm going to talk about some of these more specifically, but I'll just let you glance at that for a second. And we also have a new entity, sort of an umbrella organization called the Biomimicry Group, and they also offer training for professionals. So they have a professional pathways program, and that's training for existing professionals. So they do backyard and week-long workshops. They also have a biomimicry professional certification program that originated in the institute, and it's now been transferred to the professional pathways, but that's a 2 years master's level equivalent program. This year, they just launched a biomimicry specialty program, which is a 9-year training program. And with both of those programs, a lot of the work takes place online, and then they meet in person a few times a year. And they're international in scope. And then later this year, they're going to launch some online foundational courses so that if somebody's heard a little bit about biomimicry, they just want to learn more about life's principles, they want to learn more about how biomimicry is actually, how biology is actually integrated into design in the professional world, because every profession has sort of its own design methodology, so how do you integrate biology into different design practices? And those online courses should be available. So for somebody who just wants a little bit more of a taste of biomimicry, doesn't want to invest in 2 years or even a week-long workshop, there'll be some offerings online. So back to the institute work, something I'm really proud of is our biomimicry affiliate program. And the Biomimicry Institute has official relationships with 7 universities in North America. And all of those universities have committed to developing biomimicry as some kind of degree program within their university. So it could be a minor, it could be a certificate in biomimicry, it could be a major, or even one university is working towards developing a PhD track. And you'll notice the very first one on the list, our first signee was Universidad Iberoamericana, thanks to Raul and Caroline. So very proud of Ibero. Arizona State University in Tempe, Ontario College of Art and Design University. In Canada, Lipscomb University is in Tennessee. Cleveland Institute of Art and University of Akron are both in Ohio. And then the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. We also have a program for individuals who are committed to bringing biomimicry into their courses and into their schools, but not all of them have the support at the administrative level that the affiliate universities do. So just a few faces there. Valerie is also a fellow, but I don't have your picture yet, so I couldn't include it here. But Valerie is one of our newest fellows. I think I'm missing two other fellows up there, but those are our initial fellows. Tom, you'll notice in the middle there on the right, as well as Raul. We host an annual Biomimicry Education Summit. We just hosted our 5th annual one. That was last week, right? Yeah, last week. And it's grown from having, 20, 25 educators come to Montana the first couple of years to having somewhere between 75 and 120 folks at our 2 most recent summits. So another thing that we do is we try to promote networking between the educators, and we're developing some additional tools to do that. But we're a very small staff, and there really is an explosion of interest in biomimicry and biomimicry education. And I do some teaching myself, but all of those fellows are in the classroom every week. They've identified the real challenges. They're working in different disciplines. They know what other professors in similar disciplines might need or the challenges they run into. So we really are trying to do a lot to connect educators to each other, as well as doing what we can as staff to meet their needs. And so the Education Summit is one way we do that. At our last Education Summit, we had a couple students present the results of their participation in our student design challenges. We've offered 2 student design challenges in the past. Both were sponsored by an individual company. And Karen Bissañez, I probably didn't pronounce that quite right, but she's on the right there, and she was under Raul's tutelage last year as one of many students at Ibero who participated in the design challenge. For any of you who are still students or are professors at the university level, we're going to be offering our next student design challenge this fall, and this one's going to be quite different. It's going to be much broader and much more open. In the past, only our affiliate universities and our fellows and their students could participate in the challenges. But this year, we're going to open it up to the world, and there will be prize money associated with it, which there never was in the past. And very broadly, the challenge is going to be around energy and energy efficiency. So we'll have more details to release soon, but there's a little bit of background on our website, and I'm happy to talk to anyone more about that. So, and of course, that's a biomimetic student design challenge. We also offer workshops as well as some online professional training for teachers. Right now, the online training is geared a little bit more towards high school and elementary school teachers, but we also hope to develop some more online training for university professors in the near future. Understanding that not everyone can travel to attend a workshop, even though we love to spend a week out in the field with people. We also work on a lot of curricula. We have biology and design curricula. Sam, my colleague, has a lot of curricula for K through 8th graders. And we're collaborating on developing nature-inspired chemistry curricula for this coming year. So that curricula will be appropriate both for high school chemistry students as well as first year undergrads. We do a lot of informal education. We collaborate with various institutions to put on displays at science centers and botanical gardens and museums and aquariums. Those are just a few of the folks that we've collaborated with. And we also, here are some examples of some of the exhibits we work on. And again, in that lower right-hand corner, that's an exhibit that Raul instigated here at Ibero 2 years ago? 1 year ago? 1 year ago. So some of you may have seen that on campus. This was a small project we did in our hometown. We don't do a lot in our hometown, but this is a sort of a fresh take on a natural history classic. So we actually collaborated with our local Natural History Center to come up with informative trail signs that are, we have a river trail right next to our offices, actually, and there are 5 signs that talk about how we could learn from organisms that live in that place, what we could learn from them, and how we could apply that to human sustainability challenges. So we haven't replicated that, but they're really cool. I really like them, and I would love to have somebody else take on a similar project. Some of you are probably familiar with our website project, asknature.org. And this is essentially a library of biological strategies. So there's over 1,300 biological strategies on the site, explaining how nature does the things that it does. And I really encourage all of you to check it out. And all of the strategies, unlike in the academic literature, are organized by function. So again, it's starting to provide that bridge between biologists and designers and engineers. So that language of function. How would nature do something? What do you need your design to do? Rather than what do you want to design. What do you want your design to do? If you want it to filter sediments out of water, you could go look on Ask Nature and find out how nature deals with sediments, how it filters, how it cleans water. You know, you don't necessarily get a one-for-one match on the verb, but you can play around with synonyms and find an analogous function to what you need your design to do. I don't have a picture of our biomimicry taxonomy up here, but the taxonomy is essentially a list of all of the functions that are on the site, and those of you who are in the workshop will see it tomorrow, but for those of you who aren't, I encourage you to go on the site and check out that taxonomy so you can see how everything is organized by function. I mentioned the Vitalis water bottle, and this is actually an Ask Nature success story. So these designers, when they knew that they wanted to lightweight their bottle, they actually used Ask Nature, used the database of biological strategies, and they looked for lightweighting strategies. How does nature reduce material use? And they found the white bark pine and its spiral strategy and how it deposits material exactly where needed to save material as it builds its structure. And so even though it's a water bottle, we're still proud of it because it's the first story we know of where designers actually used Ask Nature to come up with a product that's on the market and commercialized. A couple years ago, a local musician in Missoula came to us and said, I want to write a CD of biomimicry songs. And we were like, what? What is that? But actually, it's a really fantastic CD. I think one of the tracks you can probably still find on YouTube. And this woman wrote all of the songs, and she put together a choir of kids who were, you know, all between the ages of like 5 and 11. And they recruited a lot of famous musicians, Annie DeFranco, Brandi Carlile. Those are the names that are coming to me at the moment, to play the music and record the songs with these kids, and then the kids sang on the album. And there's curricula for different age levels that goes along with all of the songs on the album. Something new that we're working on, and Valerie can probably tell you more about this, regional alliance networks. So our audience has identified that this networking function is really important, and we're too small of an organization to do it all. There's too much rapidly growing interest, so how can we help people organize locally or organize regionally in order to more quickly promote biomimicry within business, within schools, within universities, sort of at all levels. And we have 3 sort of existing regional alliance networks in South Africa, Netherlands, and Northeast Ohio. And Mexico, Portland, Houston, I misspelled that, Toronto, and Austin. I think those are all areas where there's sort of a rapidly growing interest in biomimicry. And we're trying to shape exactly what those networks will look like and how we can help support them. And finally, we have a program called Innovation for Conservation. And this is really about giving back. So closing that loop and protecting the areas and the organisms that inspire us. So not a lot of traction with this program yet, but it's something, again, that we're really passionate about, and we're trying to figure out ways to help. What I personally would like to do within my program is I would like to find a way for every university class learning about biomimicry, every fellow, every affiliate institution, to somehow connect their students to a conservation effort. So the original idea behind Innovation for Conservation was that companies that had a successful biomimetic product that was on the market would contribute a percentage of their proceeds back to conserving the habitat of the organism that inspired them. But in terms of my work, what I would like to do is I would like to figure out a way to work that conservation ethic more deeply into every biomimicry class. And maybe it's simply a volunteer project, you know? Maybe if it's a short-term class, maybe simply one day you go out and you participate in a local cleanup effort of a local habitat. You know, it could be something very simple like that, but I would like to see every biomimicry student begin to close that loop and contribute some time and effort towards conservation of ecosystems. Just to finish up, I really like this quote by David Orr, an environmental educator in the US. "Education that builds on our affinity for life would lead to a kind of awakening of possibilities and potentials that lie dormant and unused in the industrial utilitarian mind." So I invite all of you to help me open up the possibilities and potentials of all the dormant minds around you, and open your eyes and on a new way of exploring the world of educating yourselves and your children and working with us. So thank you very much.
Gracias, Megan. Thank you. Ahorita Delfín va a presentar unos casos, igual que Tom, y vamos a poder ver ya la manera en la que los diseños se han logrado realizar en ejercicios académicos en las diferentes universidades. Entonces, les invito también a que de la manera más abierta y flexible hagan cualquier pregunta en el punto en donde consideren necesario.
Bueno, pues nada más de volada, para presentarles un poco lo que hemos estado haciendo desde hace pues cerca de 5 años, 4 y medio aquí en la Universidad Iberoamericana. Empezamos en la carrera de Arquitectura y después la materia de diseño basado en la naturaleza migró hacia ingenierías, hacia diseño textil y diseño industrial. De manera muy rápida empezó a contagiarse y empezaron a venir muchos otros alumnos, entonces se convirtió en un curso de muchas disciplinas y con muchas dudas y cuestionamientos y generación de soluciones bastante distintas. El semestre pasado empezamos con Prepa Ibero, que también fue el segundo semestre de la prepa, y empezamos a ver ya la aplicación a nivel de jóvenes pues, que tienen 16 años y están empezando a ver y cómo podemos empezar a introducir la idea de la naturaleza y el acercamiento para la solución de problemas. Y básicamente los profesores que hemos estado desarrollando esto, bueno, es Raúl, que es el que ha iniciado esto a nivel pues casi del país, ¿no? Yo y Valerie, los tres somos fellows del instituto, y Rodrigo Shordia, que tuvo que salir rápido, pero estaba aquí, es el que se nos acaba de unir y estamos generando los talleres y los cursos a nivel universitario para empezar a generar mayores respuestas. Y básicamente todo empieza con Gaia y con una revisión de lo que es la posición, en gran medida de lo que es la posición del hombre frente a la Tierra y cuál es la verdadera función ecológica de la raza o de la especie humana en este lugar. Y a partir de ese cuestionamiento y de ese profundo cuestionamiento empezar a desarrollar o a dilucidar qué posibles respuestas podemos generar y que éstas sean muy útiles a nivel de las carreras profesionales que los chavos están terminando y que van a poder determinar el futuro en el futuro las capacidades de desarrollo que van a tener en el trabajo. Lo que hacemos es justo salir, y lo que hacemos es agarrar a los chavos y a partir de un poco de teoría en clase, a la segunda semana nos vamos. El primer lugar al que vamos es al Nevado de Toluca, y ahí tenemos varios ejercicios y exploramos el lugar y subimos hasta el cráter y estamos mucho tiempo en la parte del pastizal, donde los árboles ya no alcanzan a crecer lo suficiente para sostener la vida, porque falta atmósfera, y vemos cómo los pastizales funcionan y nos acercamos al borde de los árboles y vemos cómo es esa transición entre una zona arbórea sombreada y una zona donde hay mucha luz, ¿no? Y donde un depredador te puede ver, y empezamos a ver las estrategias que la naturaleza tiene en ese lugar. Y a partir de esta salida, lo que se plantea es ir siguiendo los trabajos, las líneas metodológicas que tiene esta teoría. Y a partir de esta primera salida exploramos una primera línea metodológica que es cómo encontrar soluciones a partir, caminando o andando en un camino que va de la biología al diseño. y es cuando tú sales y encuentras cosas y después ves cómo eso te puede ayudar a resolver cosas. Y es una metodología que va en espiral, increciendo, pasando por muchos aspectos una y otra vez, y la cual al final tiene que tener una evaluación, y la evaluación la hacemos en conjunto, todos los equipos en clase. Y al final tienen que generar una primera entrega. Y en estas primeras entregas, lo más padre que ha surgido, bueno, al principio eran con puros arquitectos, entonces todas resultaban en edificios, ¿no? Todas, y en grandes objetos urbanos. Y después empezaron a cambiar, y con la llegada de nuevas disciplinas empezó a modificarse muchísimo la dinámica de las entregas, y se empezaron a generar nuevas propuestas. Y en estas entregas, pues empiezan a ver todo, en la entrega tienen que ver cuál es el campeón y de dónde están sacando las estrategias, y realmente llegar a una solución para un problema que se planteó en conjunto en la clase. En los primeros semestres teníamos como cosas más arquitectónicas, como soluciones más sencillas, cosas de temperatura, de insolación, de manejo de energía, de distribución de materia, ¿no? Dentro de una vivienda o a nivel urbano. Y después, este es como el primer acercamiento que hacemos con los chavos, y después hacemos un gran viaje que, bueno, nos toma en realidad de viernes a lunes por lo general, son 4 días intensivos, y lo que hacemos es hacer este recorrido, salir de la Ciudad de México y llegar al Golfo. Y en este recorrido lo que hacemos es empezar a ver todos los ecosistemas que hay a lo largo. Este recorrido es el que de manera pequeña lo hacemos en clase, en el semestre, pero de manera extensa lo hacemos en el workshop. Y durante el workshop de una semana hacemos este recorrido y vamos deteniéndonos en cada uno de los ecosistemas para ver cómo funcionan, y a partir de cuestionamientos internos al interior del grupo poder resolver problemas. Y lo curioso es que en este viaje lo que tenemos, después de la vista de águila, tenemos el perfil, y vamos desde 4.100 metros de altitud hasta el nivel de la playa, a 0 metros, y vemos todos los ecosistemas que hay a lo largo, son cerca de 10, más los ecotonos, que son estas fronteras donde se traslapan y donde hay, aparte, ingeniosas formas y nuevas soluciones a retos, ¿no? Y vamos viendo todos esos lugares, y a partir de esta salida empezamos a generar, estipulamos un reto, y hay que resolver ya un reto, y eso nos lleva a una nueva visión del lugar, y la idea es que a partir de trabajos en mesas de trabajo y de la exploración, y también de actividades a lo largo del río que nos acercan directamente con la naturaleza, poder empezar a generar respuestas. La idea es poder empezar a ver estos lugares de manera distinta, y empezar a ir a estos lugares y podernos empapar, literalmente empaparnos, ¿no? con el lugar y con las formas en las que aquí funciona, o cómo la naturaleza ha logrado funcionar durante cientos de miles de millones de años. Después de esto, todo esto es producto o es el pretexto para irnos a la segunda vía metodológica, que es del reto a la biología, que es cuando planteas ya un reto y cuando tienes algo que resolver, entonces vas a la biología a ver cómo la biología lo resuelve. Y volvemos a evaluar, y esta evaluación no solo llega a niveles del diseño que se genera, sino es una evaluación que empieza a transminar a nuestras propias actividades diarias y a la forma en la que vemos, en particular en clase, la perspectiva de nuestro quehacer profesional. Entonces, al final tienen que hacer una segunda entrega, y por lo general las láminas de la segunda entrega son mucho más completas, son mucho más ricas, tienen una forma distinta de estar incluso estructuradas las láminas, y ya tienen una visión, y ya algo ha cambiado en su forma de ver el mundo, donde empiezan a abstraer y empiezan a generar muchos más diagramas, y es algo muy abstracto y a veces muy conceptual que llega a aterrizarse muy finamente en una solución muy práctica. Y bueno, más o menos es lo que hacemos en clases. Esto es lo que hemos llevado haciendo 4 años. Durante 4 años hemos estado desarrollando no solo cómo generar a partir de toda esta metodología y cómo acercar a los chavos, sino cómo empezar a desarrollar una estrategia pedagógica a través de la cual podamos acercar a la gente, a niños de preparatoria, universidad o profesionales, a un entorno natural y a la solución de problemas cotidianos, ¿no?
Una de las cosas que mencionaba Delfín, y es apasionante, es cómo la naturaleza desarrolla estrategias de diseño similares en ecosistemas tan diferentes, como puede ser el desierto y como puede ser la selva. Por ejemplo, una planta de agave, capta el agua a partir de una geometría rosetada, con una serie de Fibonacci, etcétera, que todo eso lo medimos, y lo distribuye hacia el centro de la planta y lo deposita en donde lo requiere, que es en las raíces. En la selva nosotros vemos las bromelias, que son las epífitas, que igual son arrocetadas, que conducen el agua y lo conducen a sus raíces, que son aéreas. Y ya empiezo a hablar yo como biólogo y él empieza a hablar como arquitecto. Entonces, pero es apasionante porque uno empieza a entender y a leer los patrones de la naturaleza, y a través de la relación con el biólogo uno empieza a describir la naturaleza desde un punto de vista de diseño. O sea, yo no hice una descripción ahorita biológica, hice una descripción de estrategia de diseño. Y también nosotros encontramos estrategias de diseño muy diferentes en el mismo ecosistema. Entonces, eso nos abre un campo creativo impresionante. Yo estoy hablando nada más de una forma, pero también puede ser cómo se organiza una comunidad o cómo se comunica. Y los Life Principles, que son principios de diseño, son esa herramienta que nos permite ir a conceptos abstractos, a la emulación, para poderlos nosotros convertir en diseños creativos, pero de cualquier índole, no nada más arquitectura o diseño industrial, sino en cualquier actitud creativa que nosotros tenemos.
Y bueno, yo en lo personal, a lo largo de varios grupos que han pasado por esta materia, que al principio eso era algo raro, llegaban los alumnos diciendo, bueno, que no era esto temas selectos de ingeniería, ¿no? Y porque no tenía nombre y no había una estructura dentro de la carrera que fuera afín a una materia que tuviera esto. Y les decíamos, no, pues esto no es temas selectos o macramé para las de textil, ¿no? O chambritas, no sé. Pero llegaban y dicen, bueno, ¿y de qué es esto? Y pues se acaban quedando y al final acaban muy, muy emocionados. Y lo sumamente interesante es eso, es que a través del profundo cuestionamiento que genera la observación de la naturaleza, que es algo como muy sencillo y que, pues, gracias a algo los griegos tuvieron ese espacio histórico donde lo que pudieron hacer fue cuestionar ampliamente la naturaleza y generaron todas las bases de muchas cosas que sucedieron después. Pero esa observación profunda empieza a generar cuestionamientos muy profundos, y lo que observas al final en los estudiantes es que empieza a generar un compromiso muy profundo. Y funciona muy bien, y es curioso que el tan solo observar a la naturaleza pueda no solo ser una forma de mejorar la forma en la que construimos y determinamos el mundo, sino también en cómo construimos y determinamos las relaciones sociales y de cómo nos construimos y nos determinamos a nosotros mismos. Entonces acaba siendo, es una herramienta de desarrollo no solo a nivel tecnológico, porque la clase aparte está puesta a las 7 de la mañana en viernes, para que solo lleguen los que quieren llegar, ¿no? Y al principio muchos no llegan, y después al final del curso empiezas a ver que todos los que están en la lista están presentes todas las clases, ¿no? Aunque es el peor horario, ¿no? Pero funciona, ¿no? Entonces, no sé, sí genera algo muy padre, y es como ver esto, o sea, es observarte ahí, sentirte ahí y ver cómo, y empezar a sentir tus pies en el suelo y empezar a pensarte como una planta, como un animal o como varias cosas. Entonces es un proceso muy interesante a nivel educativo y es un proceso muy interesante a nivel profesional, ¿no? Es una gran herramienta lo que se ha desarrollado, ¿no? Y creo que justo la responsabilidad histórica que tenemos ahorita es poder dar respuesta y estar a la altura de la circunstancia, ¿no? Y esta es una buena forma de poder hacerlo.
Sí, cuando vemos una imagen como esta, uno ya se avienta unos viajes como diciendo, aquí estamos viendo un sistema. O sea, lo que comentaba Megan, todo esto que comentaba Megan, de una serie de principios y después de objetos ya en la realidad. Hace 6 años que empecé yo a ver esto, había 10 ejemplos, ¿no, Megan? Una cosa sí, o 5, y uno lo repetía. Ahorita uno se mete y encuentra, porque se ha desarrollado mucho. Entonces aquí pues uno puede, aquí estamos viendo, lo que decía era que podíamos nosotros emular sistemas, o emular procesos, o emular formas. Entonces aquí podemos emular sistemas. Entonces podemos nosotros ver cómo los organismos o los elementos están distribuidos de una manera diferente, colaborando, permitiendo pasar, el uso de los recursos de manera muy dinámica. Los árboles de arriba no quieren quedarse con todos los recursos, sino que los quieren compartir, porque si se los quedan se caen, se vienen abajo. Y su manera como detienen el suelo, y el mismo suelo los detiene a ellos. Entonces todo esto, si empezamos nosotros a imaginarnos leyes, o ciudades, o edificios, o organizaciones, nosotros lo podemos emular. ¿Sí? Pero necesitamos en esta disciplina la interpretación del biólogo, porque nosotros nos lo podemos imaginar, pero en realidad el biólogo nos va a decir cómo es que realmente la naturaleza lo hace. Entonces, en vez de ser un diseño inspiracional, o sea, nada más mi edificio es un árbol, a algo que realmente por qué el árbol está haciendo las cosas de determinada manera. Entonces, bueno, ahorita vamos a menos de que quieras decir algo, pero vamos a pasar con Tom, que nos va a explicar. A ver, conéctate esta. De este lado. Tom McKee es arquitecto paisajista, egresado de Berkeley. Da clases en la Universidad de Berkeley. ¿Y cómo se llama la otra? ¿The other university? California College of the Arts. Así voy también aprendiendo inglés. Él es también fellow y you didn't mention the advisory board. Y también es consejero del grupo de educadores del instituto, en donde estamos Tom y yo, y otras 4 personas. Entonces, bueno, pero Tom es una persona que realmente se cuestiona el tema de la biomimesis, la ha llevado a la universidad, a los diferentes grados, inclusive ha trabajado muy seriamente con chavos. You've been working with youngsters also.
Yes.
And that's a great experience to
I
share.
hate kids, really. No.
And what else? He just came from Schumacher. He gave
Yes, that's right.
a 1-week course with another member of the Biomimicry Institute, Kurt McNamara. So, well, welcome, Tom.
Thank you.
And let's see how you...
Yes, let's see what I got. Thank you, Raul. Thank you very much for having me. Thank all of you for hosting me here. Very pleased to be here. I know Raul and I go back not that long, but we've formed a great friendship, and biomimicry is one of the things that brought us together. So thank you. As Raul probably mentioned, I'm a teacher at different levels. I teach graduate students at Berkeley, undergrads at California College of the Arts, and I also founded a nonprofit organization called Bio Dream Machine. We do K-12 education, curriculum development, and consulting. I also blog at a website called greenerdesign.com, or if you go to greenbiz, B-I-Z.com, you can also get my blog. So I have a slightly different perspective than Megan. Megan gave you a great overview of biomimicry. I'm a teacher of mostly designers, though at Berkeley I teach a whole range of students, whether biology, physics, computer, what have you. But mostly we focus in on innovation and problem solving, using bio-inspired design as one of the tools that you could use to solve problems. So I'm assuming all of you are here because you're problem solvers and you want to improve your problem solving skills. And that's one of the things that we concentrate on in my courses. So Raul asked me to come and talk a little bit about my approach or our approach in some of these classes. And so that's what I'm going to talk to you tonight about, some of the approaches that we use in teaching bio-inspired design. And I'll give you, I think, three themes or slogans to think about for your work. And I'm happy to take questions afterwards, of course. So bio-inspired design, really you're on a pathway to discovery, as I think Megan implied. You are going to be discovering a whole new framework for looking at problems. So you know a lot about technology perhaps, or you know a lot about business, but seeing your particular problems through the frame of nature is going to give you some new insights perhaps. So I'm going to, this talk is about a couple of things I'm going to suggest that you do. First of all, be curious and look closely, as Megan had said. Go outside, take a look at nature, look very closely at that in different ways. Second, question always and in different ways. Turn your problem around in different ways, question it in ways that are new to you. Third, solve for contradictions. Solving contradictions is a very quick way to innovate. So something is this, but it's not that. There's some sort of inbred contradiction in the problem that you have in front of you. If you go right at that contradiction, often you can find a quick way to innovate. And then finally, fourth, consider these three themes, and we'll talk about this a little ways into the slideshow. Little things don't add up, they multiply up. In nature is a component-based technology, if you will. Little things are put together in complex arrays, and they make very complicated and complex things. But you can't really describe, for instance, your mind by looking at the neurons in your brain. By using that so-called reductionist approach, you can't really explain your mind. And in biology, that's called emergence. So something emerges in the next scale of complexity, and you can't explain it by its individual parts. So little things don't add up, they multiply up. And you'll see that time and time again in nature, and you should think about that when you're trying to solve your problem. You should think about, how can I make an emergent solution to my problem? And that's another way to innovate. So the second theme I'd like you to consider is, aren't you smart? So a guy named Julian Vincent of the University of Bath did a study of how nature solves problems and how technology solves problems. Nature tends to solve problems using information and structure rather than energy and materials. And so embedding information maybe into your materials or into your solution is another way for you to innovate by being inspired by nature. So aren't you smart? And we'll look at some examples a little later. So aren't you smart? How can we make something that's dumb, like this podium is pretty dumb. I have to adjust myself to this podium. I have to adjust my body to this piece of wood instead of it adjusting itself to me. How can we make this so-called dumb thing smarter? How can you do that? And third is this theme, one of my favorites, is surfing for free. I'm from California, so we have to talk about surfing. So how can you surf for free? And we're going to explain that a little bit. Surfing for free is taking advantage of physical phenomena that already exist in nature. They happen. Hot air is going to rise. You know, you're not going to prevent that hot air from rising, but how can you take advantage of that to solve your problem? So surfing for free. Animals do it all the time. They do it all the time. Why? Because it's very expensive to expend energy. It's really expensive. You want to do something else. In the world of nature, what do you want to do? Basically, you want to reproduce, right? You want to pass your genes down. That's the big idea. So you want to save energy doing other things like keeping warm and finding food and so on and so forth. So surfing for free is that third theme that I want to talk to you about tonight. So be curious, look closely. I usually start a lot of my lectures with an ostrich egg. I love the ostrich egg because of its shape, its elegance, and it solves a bunch of contradictions, which maybe we'll go into a little later. But it's got to, for instance, it's got to move very easily, but then it has to stay put. It's got to keep some things out, let some things in. It's got to be light but strong. It's got a whole bunch of contradictions that it has to solve, and it solves them beautifully. Won't go into all of them. On the left is a scanning electron micrograph image of the actual shell of an ostrich egg, and on the right, of course, is the perpetrator of the shell. This is a male ostrich, I believe. They can be as much as 350 pounds of weight and 9 feet tall, the fastest bipedal animal on the planet. But they produce an amazing egg, and it's full of contradictions, but you have to look closely at that egg. It's not just a single monolithic material, it's a whole system. As you can see on the left, it's a whole system operating to solve contradictions. And in the class, we get into a whole bunch of things. Use of composites, use of structure rather than materials. How do you put things, how do you make fail-safe systems within this egg, strictly by passive arrangement of material. The egg does all of these things, but it does it in a system, and you have to look closely first before you can actually know those things. Otherwise, it's just an egg, right? Sitting on a table, looks nice, but you have to look a little closely at the egg. For instance, we won't go into these parts of the embryo, the allantois, and so on and so forth, but this egg is a living system inside. It's taking care of a living thing. And that living thing is growing. The egg isn't getting any bigger, but the living thing is growing, another contradiction in the egg. So here's another SEM photo cross-section of that shell, and you can see it has all sorts of different parts. And let's see if I dare use this, the red. If you notice here, these long so-called palisade levels, that structure is actually taking that compressive load that 350-pound ostrich might be putting on this shell. It's also, though, it's got these membranes, a series of membranes that are actually acting as a flexible mat for these harder materials to ride on. So there's compression and tension happening in the eggshell just as you would happen in a dome that we might build. So looking closely at that egg, and here's a diagram of those so-called palisade levels, mammillary cones, and the membranes. And also it's acting as a gas exchange system. So we won't get into it, but just taking a closer look at the egg, here's a great close-up of one of those cones resting on the mats. And so this is also being developed as it's going down the uterus too, right? So it's a whole process as well as a material system. So question always and in different ways. So one of the first questions you have to ask, if we're going to do life-inspired design, what is life? And you think about, well, I mean, we talk about bio-inspired design, but what is life? And on the left, you could look at all sorts of characteristics of life, right? You know, metabolism, it's got reproduction, it's got growth, it's got movement, responsiveness, it's complex, right? well, it's fine, and that's true, but on the right, a biologist would say, you know, really life, the only way you can define life is it's got 4 organic molecules. If it's got these things, then it's living, right? Nucleic acids, they're all about the information. Proteins, they do all the work. Carbohydrates, you know, their structure in food. And fats and lipids are really important for membranes. So let's talk about what life is before we start saying, well, I'm going to design based on life. I'm going to do bio-inspired design. Well, what is life? So you really have to look at life. What is it? For instance, here's Hans Hockey blue sail installation, art installation. It's responsive, it's got movement, but it's not alive, is it? You know, how about Walter DeMario's lightning fields? It's complex, it's responsive, it's got movement, it's not alive though. And finally, Frank Lloyd Wright's Guggenheim Museum, that's a bunch of dead concrete, right? It's not alive, but you know, yet, those shapes really, you respond to that. Those look alive, don't they? Even though it's a lot of dead concrete, you've got these complex curves going and so on and so forth, and your brain has registered that complex curve saying, I know that shape. That shape has to do with growth. That shape has to do with a living thing. So we want to make our designs come alive. We want to base them on life. So how do we do that? We have to study life first. So in our classes, we talk about, first of all, the breadth of life. Another, how wide is that life, that incredible diversity of life? Megan mentioned that 30 million species, and yeah, that's kind. We don't really know how many species are out there, but it's really important to know where on these taxonomic schemes you're looking in that treasure trove of solutions. There's lots of life out there. It's bewilderingly diverse, but it's good for you to know what boxes they fit in so you can go and look. So knowing about the breadth of life is pretty important. So let's take a look at the breadth of life. So, and when you do take a look at the breadth of life, there's some things that might surprise you. We talk about the largest living animal is the blue whale, right? Oh, everybody knows that, 200 feet long, and it's huge and so forth. But what's the largest living thing? Well, we all knew it was this, right? The humongous fungus. It's a mushroom in Oregon, you know? 2,200 acres big, 3.5 miles across. It's huge, it's all underground. And it's a fungus, it's not even an animal. So there are some surprises out there when you look at taxonomy and you look at the breadth of life. But who really rules the world? We knew it was Prochlorococcus, right? It's probably the most abundant organism on the planet, and it hadn't even been discovered till 1988. And there's about, 100,000 per liter in the ocean. It's a bacteria, it's a photosynthesizing bacteria. And so this Prochlorococcus, they estimate, produces about 20% of the oxygen in our atmosphere. So I tell my students, every 5th breath that you take, you can thank Prochlorococcus, right? I mean, 20%, you figure it out, right? So, and we didn't even know it existed till 1988. So looking at the breadth of life is pretty important if we're going to come up with some solutions. And well, it's 1/10,000,000th the size of that blue whale. But who's more important? You tell me. So, and then who rules the animal kingdom? Sorry, L.T. Gray, you do not rule the animal kingdom. Arthropods rule the animal kingdom, right? Insects. Invertebrates rule the world, and they really have a huge treasure trove of solutions for all of us. And they're really what, mass-wise, they're really what's important in the animal world. We couldn't exist without them. So, in addition to the breadth of life, we need to look at the depth of life. So if you're going to go hunting around in nature's treasure chests and want to know what box you want to look in for solutions, you got to look at, well, what depth, what depth am I talking about? Am I talking about the atom or the molecule or the cell or the tissue or the organ or the organism or a population or a community or an ecosystem all the way up to the biosphere? Where am I looking? Where am I looking for solutions? And scale does matter. To us, gravity and inertia really matters, right? because we're big and clunky compared to most of the animals in the world. But to a mosquito, gravity inertia, it doesn't matter. There's things like drag and surface tension of water, things that we don't even care about. That's what matters to a mosquito. So scale and where you're looking on that scale really matters if you're going to try to find some solutions for your designs. So solve for contradictions. Back to the ostrich egg. The ostrich egg is the largest bird's egg in the world. It's also the smallest bird's egg in the world. That's one contradiction. Anybody know the solution to that little riddle? It's the largest, but it's also the smallest. That's right. Can we have a stuffed animal for this lady in the front? Yeah. Okay, thank you, Valerie. Yes. In proportion to the size of the animal that makes the egg, it's the smallest bird's egg in the world. So again, question always and question in different ways. How are you going to frame your question? If you're going to be innovative, you've got to reframe your question. Maybe it's the smallest egg and not the biggest. So anyway, solving contradictions is one thing that the ostrich egg does really well. And it's actually been emulated way back when in the 15th century by Filippo Brunelleschi, who designed the dome at Santa Maria del Fiore in Florence. And there's a tale about the egg that I won't tell, but anyway, he studied that egg. Well, I will tell a tale. Why not? I mean, it's a story. So they're going to have a contest. They're going to have a contest to make this dome for the basilica, and they say, Brunelleschi, we want you to design this dome. And he says, okay, well, I'll design the dome. He said, well, can you show us your model of this? And he said, well, no, I'm not going to show you the model. I said, oh, come on, Brunelleschi, show us your model. He said, no, I'm not going to show you the model. So let's have a contest instead. Anyone who can balance an egg upright should get the award for the contest. And they said, well, that's silly. So all the other architects were trying to balance the egg on this slab of marble, and they couldn't do it, So okay, we give up, Brunelleschi. How do you do it? And he takes the egg and he goes, plonk, and he smashes it on the marble, and it's upright. And they said, oh, well, we could have done that. And he said, well, see, I told you, that's why I'm not going to show you my model. So he got the award for the job, but also he studied the stresses that were evident in this dome, and at the time, I think it was the largest dome ever constructed, and he did ribbing and special brickwork in order to not only take the compression loads of this dome, but also the tension loads that are happening around the edge. And the ostrich egg is a artifact that does that beautifully. Here's Heinz Eisler. He's an engineer, Swiss engineer, personal hero of mine. He does thin-shelled concrete structures, and whereas the chicken egg is maybe 1 to 200 ratio of thickness to area covered, he can do a 1 to 800 ratio with some of his thin-shelled structures. So he really looked at, as nature does, how do you use the form rather than material to gain strength? Now he wasn't studying nature. He'd never say, I was studying nature, but he was a wild man. He used to go out in the freezing weather and hang washcloths, wet washcloths, and they would assume these natural shapes when they froze, and he'd turn them over, and he would use those as models for his domes. He would turn the tension loads evidenced in these frozen washcloths into compression loads for his domes. So observing in a very simple way, no computers, no whirring motors or anything, just a very simple observation of phenomenon in nature can take you a long way. But nature is different than technology, isn't it? It's got different goals, different criteria for success, and advantages and constraints. The spiny katydid on the right has, a different agenda than the 59 Cadillac, even though it's called the Shark. So solutions are different in technology versus nature. On the left, we're going to cut out and we're going to mine materials. We're going to bend it, heat it, beat it, and treat it. We're going to cut out the excess and throw it away, and we're going to bolt it together. But the tree on the right is not going to do that. It's going to build to shape. It's going to put material where it's needed according to the stresses that are working on it and the information feedback loops that it has within itself as an organism. And you have to understand what those differences are, what we're capable of and what the organic substances are capable of. Some constraints are the same, though. Technology and nature still have to obey the laws of space and physics, right? So whether you're a geodesic dome or a lonia, a diatom, or a soccer ball or carbon-60, you cannot enclose spherical space with using only hexagons. You can't do it. It's impossible. You know, the living organism can't do it, and we can't do it with a soccer ball. We have to use a pentagon. And pentagons are evident in the natural world as well as our technological world. So you have to obey space and physics. I was just at Schumacher College for the first week of a 2-week biomimicry course. Michael Pollan was the next week, and he and I talked a little bit, but he did the Eden Project in Cornwall, and they used this natural shape because of the undulating and the uncertain ground plane that they had to deal with. But they also found out that when they cut these shapes, or when they join these two domes together at different planes, just like soap bubbles would do, they got perfect arches out of it. So the physics was there, the space was there, it's going to happen, they just took advantage of it. Forms in nature is another diatom. It has to fold in the same way that this kind of textbook page on roof forms would do. And some of the opportunities are the same. Megan showed the termite mounds. This is indeed the Eastgate building in Harare and of Mick Pierce design. And yes, he has done more designs, Council House 2 in Melbourne, Australia, for instance, beyond this design. But the convection currents, the thermal massing, the shading, the cooling during the evening, and the heating up during the day, those are all phenomena that are happening, whether it's in the building or in the termite mound. So, just to summarize, you got to obey laws of space, laws of physics, biology, and probability. So little things. Here we are to our slogans. Little things don't add up; they multiply. So, and we talked about emergence. This is just an image of fire ants. Teams at Georgia Tech recently looked at fire ants and how they actually link themselves together in order to float down rivers. So a single ant, of course, is going to be, just as the mosquito, is going to be overwhelmed by the surface tension of water. But when they're all linked together as a raft, they actually can move about not using rivers consciously, but not being destroyed by water. So nature builds with hierarchical structures. Remember we talked about the depth of life and all those different scales. Well, often nature is solving problems at these different scales simultaneously, and that's something you should think about with your problems. At how many different scales did I solve this problem? Could I solve it in more scales than I'm doing now? I work with a guy at Berkeley. I work with a guy named Bob Full. He was one of the team that discovered how geckos stick to walls. Geckos can walk on ceilings and stick to walls and so on and so forth. There was some debate about how they did it. Was it surface tension? Was it an adhesive? Blah, blah, blah. Well, it happens to be that it's van der Waals forces, weak molecular forces between objects that allow the gecko to stick to ceilings and walls. But I wanted to point out that when they looked at the gecko, going down the scales from the foot, here's a toe showing a lamellae, and then each of these fringes or lamellae have these setae, and each of these setae, here's a single setae, has split ends, and guess what? All the split ends have pads on them. So by the time you're done, they've got billions, literally billions of these pads sticking to the wall. We can't stick to walls and ceilings because we can't get close enough. but because of this structure, the gecko can. And it's amazing because, and they're working on a gecko tape, which will be virtually a one-sided Velcro tape, and it not only does the gecko able to stick, but according to the angle of the pressure, can release. They actually peel back their toes to release this thing. So think of a tape that you can stick to anything, depending on how you put it down and how you take it up. It's amazing. It will be revolutionary. It will make Velcro look like high button shoes. So thinking about that. And it's all about materials. So StickyBot was developed by a team at Stanford University, and they also recognized in order for us to make StickyBot work, and I'm sure on YouTube there are motion pictures of StickyBot going up walls, glass, and so forth. They knew they had to work in a hierarchy of scales. They had to solve their problem at all these different scales to make this thing work. Flexible articulation, then censored legs, and then segmented toes, and then the actual hairs on the pad. Here's an example of emergence in architecture. I was just in London and went to the British Museum where Foster and Partners had roofed over the Great Court at the British Museum. And this was not a design that came down from on high, some designer's idea, but it's really through parametric modeling. It studied using the help of a mathematician from the University of Bath, studied all the stresses that were happening on this central historic reading room here. They couldn't put a lot of stresses on it, and they also had another constraint. They didn't want to make something too high to interfere with the views that people valued in that neighborhood in London. So they made this kind of flat toroid shape, or like a square bagel, and it's actually a beautiful space to be in. But they also avoided lateral stresses on the reading room and so forth. But all of it designed by the stresses that they were forced to contend with. So, aren't you smart is the next slogan. How do we embed information into our solutions? A natural example is hemoglobin. Hemoglobin does an incredible job. It not only brings oxygen from your lungs to your body parts, but brings carbon dioxide back out to exhale. And all of it by the array that it sets itself in. And it's also triggered by how much oxygen or carbon dioxide is in the immediate atmosphere. It'll open up sites, much like an allosteric protein would. So it's information rich, it's component based, it's all about the array and not the materials, and therefore it's opportunistic and adaptable. And that's what you want, right? If we want to make a sustainable world, it needs to be adaptable and opportunistic. Surfing for free is the last slogan. This is thanks to Stephen Vogel, who came out, who wrote Cat's Paws and Catapults, came out to lecture for us at my class this last fall, or spring rather. He put this limpet, this marine invertebrate mollusk, in a flow tank and put some dye in it, and saw that actually the limpet's shape is encouraging, the limpet is a filter feeder, is encouraging a flow of water up through the bottom of the skirt and out through the hole of this keyhole limpet. And so he was just demonstrating that using this dye. And nature has a lot of examples of this, of surfing for free, in which animals, organisms are taking advantage of phenomena that are already there. A technological example, this past, we were lucky enough to be, my class was lucky enough to be sponsored partially by Qualcomm. They make a color display device. It's based on structural color. In animals, peacocks have structural color as well as pigment. Beetle carapaces, abalone shells, the nacre and abalone shells, and the morpho butterfly, famous for structural color. So they have taken that technology, taken the principle of it, abstracted the principle, and using the methods and materials that were at hand, known from silicon wafer production for computer chips, they've made a color display device. And so, oops, I guess I didn't have any, I better explain that a little further. So on the butterfly, white light, which contains all the colors, comes in, strikes this nano surface, like this rib surface, and this rib surface at the nano scale, really tiny scale, has all these little shelves, and these little shelves trap this light and break it apart. And when the different wavelengths, and each color has a different wavelength, come out, some of them interfere with others, and that's why sometimes you see blue, sometimes you see green. All the other colors are getting interfered out, and you're not seeing them. Well, they've come up with a technology, which I guess we won't go into, of how to replicate that structural color. Why is it good? Uses less energy, you can see it in the sunlight, and it's going to be quite an innovation, and it's being streamed into products now. So finally, just our course organization, something you might consider. 1 year I devised this so-called biodesign cube. Just to give students some idea of where they might be in their search for bioinspiration. So here we have just the observed phenomenon in our world. It could be a form, it could be a process, it could be a system. So, you know, that basically covers what we see in our tangible world. This axis is all about what's the key parameter, what's the most important thing about something that you're looking at. Is it structure, is it energy, or is it information? You could also add time, material, space, that sort of thing. And then finally, what is the application? Is it science, design, or business? So this gives students an idea of, well, where are we in this search of ours? It's a general tool for them to use, and this is one. Whoa, how'd that happen? That was one way of unpacking that. Let's see now. You know, I think, we'll have some technical help here. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Raul, once again. This is one way of unpacking the biodesign cube. So pulling it apart in these cells and taking a look at, well, what am I doing? Am I looking at a system and the structure of that system and applying it to business, say, or, you know, so it's a way to just kind of find your way through the maze, because a lot of times you get lost in the weeds out there looking at different examples, and they're all very cool and so forth, but it's easy to lose your way in trying to get your solutions. So, in summary, remember, be curious, look closely, question always and in different ways, solve for contradictions is a way to innovate, as the ostrich egg does, and then consider those three themes. Little things don't add up, they multiply. Aren't you smart? Can you make something smarter? And can you surf for free? And thank you very much.
¿Quieren alguna pregunta, Tom? O que presente ahorita Valerie una cuestión ahí general de lo que está haciendo y después ya dejamos libre el foro para. Creo que es muy importante. No veo. ¿Es esta? Es que no veo. De las cuestiones que se estuvieron mencionando ahorita, y para redondear un poquito lo que también comentó Megan, todo como gran universo de lo que es el diseño inspirado en la naturaleza. ¿Y cómo? Valerie, arquitecta también, y bueno, ella está también integrada a todo este esfuerzo de generar una mejor condición en el diseño y en la labor profesional, y creo que aquí muchas de las inquietudes que pueden haber surgido en el diplomado y que siguen surgiendo, se pueden ir articulando. Así es de que, Valeria.
Gracias, Raúl. Buenas noches a todos. Muchas gracias a la universidad por darme este espacio para, pues de alguna manera, presentar este proyecto que tenemos, pues muchos de los docentes aquí en la Ibero, muchos de los egresados, de los diplomados, por supuesto toda la gente que se ha formado a través de Biomimicry, y es este proyecto de hacer una red de trabajo. Tiene esta intención de promover que estos conceptos lleguen lo más rápido posible al quehacer cotidiano. Entonces, bueno, ante la propuesta que nos hace el Biomimicry Group de hacer una red de trabajo, y con las inquietudes que traíamos de generar comunidad, no sé cuántos de aquí hayan tomado el Diplomado de Comunidades Sustentables. ¿Hay alguien? No hay nadie, se los recomiendo muchísimo. Ok. Pues decidimos echar a andar esta red, ¿no? Aprovechamos la energía libre que nos manda Biomimicry y pues tomamos el reto. Esta red está en sus primeras fases de gestación, y bueno, aquí tienen la imagen de una raíz y el inicio del contrafuerte de una ceiba, que es este árbol gigante característico de Mesoamérica. Y bueno, está aquí por dos temas. Uno, porque finalmente es uno de los elementos, bueno, organismos vivos que estudiamos en el workshop de Veracruz, y es un organismo que nos une como comunidad, pero también es un organismo que genera vida y que genera comunidad. Entonces, hasta ahora es como el organismo inspirador de esta red. Estamos en una fase tan inicial que podría ser que encontremos a otro campeón, pero sí tenemos esta intención de encontrar un organismo, un sistema que nos inspire y que podamos emular. El megapropósito de esta red, por supuesto, es promover la vida, es decir, es generar condiciones que promuevan la vida. Y bueno, los propósitos específicos son incrementar el descubrimiento y aprendizaje de Biomimicry, que finalmente, y probablemente ya después de las exposiciones tan inspiradoras de Megan y de Tom, de Delfín y de Raúl, habrán entendido que son conceptos que generan conciencia, que son despertadores de muchas inquietudes. Entonces, pues creo que son estos conceptos que necesitamos tener muy presentes para poder evolucionar finalmente. Impulsar a Biomimicry en función de las fortalezas de México, ese es uno de los propósitos fundamentales de esta red, siendo la biodiversidad como uno de los elementos fuertes de México. Estamos diciendo que hay una diversidad brutal de organismos sin estudiar. Probablemente ya habrán visto en el diplomado que 50% de la biodiversidad del planeta se encuentra sobre la República de México. No sé si ese dato ya lo tenían, pero creo que es un dato importante, y eso implica pues una gran responsabilidad como integrantes. Se nos acabó la pila. pues de nuestra comunidad nacional. ¿Habrá que reiniciar? Espero que ustedes todavía tengan pila, ¿sí? Tengo que... Esa es la importante. Los propósitos más específicos y con miras a aterrizar este proyecto es incrementar el conocimiento, que ya hay mucho hecho en este sentido, sin embargo mucho por hacer, incrementar la investigación, justamente por la diversidad que hay en este país, incrementar el diseño de productos, procesos, edificios y organizaciones responsables. Y cuando digo responsables es localmente responsivas, ¿no? Promover la conservación de la biodiversidad, por supuesto, mexicana. Aquí otro ángulo de la ceiba. Y bueno, tenemos como metas a diferentes plazos. A corto plazo es armar un directorio. Todavía somos una comunidad pequeña, sin embargo hay gente formada bajo la metodología de Biomimicry un poco, sobre todo en la República ya, eso es una gran fortaleza. Tener un sistema de invitación, de unión a la red que ya está echado a andar, y un sistema de promoción de eventos y por supuesto un plan de trabajo. Estaremos apegándonos a los lineamientos que nos está proponiendo el Biomimicry Group para lograr que esta red esté estrechamente vinculada con la red internacional que se está armando. Actualmente la red que nos está dando pauta es la red de Sudáfrica, que es la más desarrollada. Y bueno, a corto plazo tendremos que entregar una carta de intención y integrar un núcleo multidisciplinario, como habrán visto, es como parte fundamental de la metodología. Y bueno, este equipo multidisciplinario debe de integrar pues estos perfiles aquí listados. Y queremos darle particular énfasis a la promoción y a la ciencia. También se buscará generar eventos catalizadores. Esta red es tan nueva, finalmente, está en un estado absoluto dinámico de no estabilidad y esperamos muy rápido lograr un poco de estabilidad. Sin embargo, la idea de la estructura de esta red es que sea extremadamente adaptable. Otro ángulo de la ceiba. Esta es nuestra ceiba de Veracruz. Aquí hay una gráfica con los perfiles de quienes se han educado en México bajo la metodología de Biomimicry. Como podrán ver, tenemos una población mayoritaria de arquitectos, seguida de una población bastante importante de estudiantes en diferentes disciplinas. Están los diseñadores textiles, los diseñadores industriales, están los de la prepa, etcétera. Una de las metas es que esta gráfica tenga sus columnas lo más alineadas posibles. Es decir, si quisiéramos tener perfiles mucho más variados para realmente a nivel profesional y académico generar dinámicas multidisciplinarias. Necesitamos biólogos, muchísimos biólogos, así que si conocen biólogos, no dejen de invitarlos a esta pues, nueva propuesta, a este nuevo enfoque para abordar los temas. También tenemos en formación, si observan ahí, allá un grupo de niños, y bueno, es muy esperanzador. Aquí podrán ver otra gráfica con los grados de educación logrados por mexicanos en términos de esta metodología. Tenemos a 2 personas certificadas con esta propuesta de 2 años. Tenemos a una persona que se está certificando por 2 años también, está en proceso. Tenemos una persona que está tomando este nuevo producto, por llamarlo de alguna manera, de 8 meses, que creemos va a tener mucho éxito a nivel de lo que es la educación de profesionistas. Tenemos a 3 fellows, que estamos aquí presentes. Tenemos a Delfín formado en el BAT, no sé si haya más biólogos mexicanos formados con BAT. Y bueno, están luego los estudiantes que se han ido formando o aquí o en el liceo, que son parte del porcentaje. Y bueno, todos hemos en su mayoría pasado por los workshops, ¿no? Es de subrayar que en los integrantes actuales de la red, todos los que han ahondado en su formación Biomimicry están involucrados, han manifestado su deseo de soportar esta red y de hacerla funcionar. Paralelamente se han integrado 3 otras personas que se han formado más a detalle. Ya tenemos un correo electrónico, así que si tienen dudas, sugerencias o quieren de alguna manera integrar la red, pueden tomar nota de este correo. También tenemos una página en construcción en Facebook, así como un área que sea más de intercambio de red, ¿no? Y bueno, para cerrar esta pequeña presentación de la red, una visión general de la ceiba. Como pueden ver, la escala de este árbol es impresionante. El tronco llega a medir 3 metros de diámetro y su cánope permite albergar una diversidad de vida impresionante, incluyéndonos. Solía ser el centro urbano de muchas culturas mesoamericanas. Fue también el centro de ciudad de muchas ciudades coloniales. Y bueno, este árbol genera ecosistema, pero también tiene la propiedad de generar red. Entonces, se interconecta con organismos de su especie, de alguna manera. Básicamente, es como finalmente esta propuesta de la red es una apertura a que estos conceptos que estamos recibiendo, que son increíbles, que son promotores innovadores, se inserten lo más rápido posible pues en todas nuestras academias, pero también en nuestra vida profesional. Y bueno, pues espero que sean parte de ella en breve. Muchas gracias.
Pues como vieron, el programa incluyó todo lo que es el mundo en lo que se está trabajando con Biomimicry. Pues muchas gracias, Megan, Tom, por haber compartido con nosotros su conocimiento. Y para lo que va a venir estos siguientes días, bueno, mañana tenemos el taller corto y también continuamos con el taller largo. Nos vamos a ver a las 9, queremos empezar en punto, ojalá que el tráfico nos lo permita. Va a ser en este edificio al fondo, en el sótano, enfrente donde están los plotters. Las indicaciones para el viaje, pues se les han estado mandando, mañana vamos a terminar de resolver dudas. Los del diplomado que traigan sus fotos, por favor entréguenmelas a mí, que los que todavía falten. Y si tienen cualquier duda, comentario, igual acérquense a nosotros y seguimos conversando. Muchas gracias.